from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Isabelle Westbury, sitting pretty at the Oval in South London, where the fourth test between England and India's men is due to get underway. And there really is a tension in the air. The series is nicely poised at 1-1, but it all looked done and dusted just a week ago with India 1-0 up and looking imposing. However, a week is a long time in sport, and what a turnaround it was by England in the third test. Have we got an Indian summer on our hands? We shall soon find out.
It's Jim Maxwell for the ABC, somewhere in my cave in Sydney. So the land of the troglodyte continues here in New South Wales and a few other places in Australia. As I mentioned last week, this country is called Australia, but in fact it has a number of republics, and we have some border issues, which may make life difficult for the Ashes to even take place. And we've got a guest coming on the show who might be happy that all 5 tests are played at the Gabba. That could happen because there are certain places in this country where you cannot go, Charu.
I feel your pain, Jim. This is Charu Sharma for All India Radio. I'm at the Sheraton Hotel in Hyderabad on my way back home after a very successful player auction for Season 8 of the Pro Kabaddi League, and I'm glad to report that we had a record signing by one of the teams, 16.5 million Indian rupees. So Kabaddi is on and running. But of course, all cricketing eyes are on the fourth test, and Izzy, you're right there, but I can only add from my perspective that it could still be an Indian summer because one bad innings doesn't make a winter.
Well, let's hope you're right there, Charu. Away from England, India and Australia, one of the greatest bowlers of all time announced his retirement from all forms of cricket this week.
The two batsmen really in complete control and command here, and putting the pressure and exerting it on the South Africans. Dale Steyn, duck pond, and he comes in from, and he's bowled him, middle stump. That's his first test wicket, and it's a crucial one. Celebration by the South Africans. He's got the one to sneak through those defences, the tight defence of Marcus Trescothick, the senior batsman.
Dale Steyn has called time on his 18-year professional career, saying in a statement that he's bittersweet but grateful. And you can see why there may be some sorrow. He ended up just one shy of 700 international wickets and was the #1 bowler in the ICC Test rankings for a record 263 weeks between 2008 and 2014. Jim, he's called it bittersweet. How do you reflect on his career? Can you think of any iconic moments that stand out?
One I do think of is his highest test score at a test match in Melbourne. He got 76 with J.P. Duminy, but it was his bowling, of course, that shattered the stumps, and mainly top-order batsman. He's number 6 in the hit parade of strike test cricket bowlers, 42 balls. That's a wicket around every 7 overs. There are only 5 other fellows who've taken any sort of wickets in Test cricket who are ahead of him. In fact, Kagiso Rabada is just ahead of him, 42.4 balls per Test wicket. Great strike bowler. And one thing we should remember, he's one of the very few Test cricketers to star in a movie. Well, it was a bit part. A movie called Blended. Go and look it up. He played himself, South African Test cricketer, in that movie. So there's a bit of trivia for you, because I know how much you love that kind of trivia, Izzy. What a wonderful cricketer he's been.
Quite the legacy on and off the field. I'm pretty sure that I've seen Brett Lee in a Bollywood movie as well, so maybe it's a fast bowling thing. Charu, Dale Steyn's best Test figures came against India in 2010, and he retired from that format in 2019. Even though he held that record-long stint in the ICC rankings, and we've heard from Jim about what kind of a strike bowler he was, Jim did touch on his injuries. Do you think that those injuries meant that we didn't perhaps see even the best of him over a long period of time?
Well, that's debatable. I mean, most fast bowlers tend to have long periods of injury, but, you know, he had his share for sure. But I don't think there's any cricketer in the world who will dispute the fact that Dale Steyn at his best was the best bowler, fast bowler in the world. And of course, he had some specialities in that much as he was in the late 140s, even 150, but he kept the ball up. And his biggest asset was that late out swing, which was deadly for most right-handers. And he thrived. He gave away a few runs, I suppose, because he kept the ball up. And he wasn't the type to kind of, from whatever I remember, to bang it in short and hassle the batsman on that score. He just kept it up, kept it quick, and kept it moving away from right-handers. Deadly fast bowler. And I'm glad at least the statistics reflect the fact that he was right on top of the world in terms of rankings for a longish time. Could he have bowled longer? Yes. And I also think he didn't really enjoy short-form cricket because he had a decent stint at, say, the IPL and other T20 tournaments, but, he just didn't have the stomach for that. So for him, it was pure fast bowling in test matches, and that's where he did his best.
As you know, I am at the Oval ahead of the fourth test between England and India, with the series all square at 1-1. And it really does feel as if this series could go anywhere. The Oval is traditionally the final men's test in the English summer, but in this series it's the penultimate one, which means that they're going off to Old Trafford afterwards. But there's a nervous anticipation here already. We've just tipped into September, so it feels like the business end of the summer. Charu, there was some brilliant bowling by England, and finally some brilliant catching in the slip cordon as well. But from an Indian perspective, does the similarity between some of the Indian dismissals concern you?
Well, yes. I mean, you can't keep getting caught at slip or by the keeper, and you've got to counter that. But I really would like to give the credit to the English bowlers, because there's no doubt that they bowled some very good lines and lengths to begin with to the Indian openers or the top order, and that's why they kept striking. There is a lot of concern about Kohli, but more on that later. I'm sure the Indians are smart enough and experienced enough to now try and ensure that they don't get caught in the same trap again and again. But I would still like to give the credit to the English bowlers, because if they hadn't bowled such fantastic wicket-taking deliveries, and a number of them, then the Indians, it's just that early period that they have to survive. Had they survived, they are full of runs, the Indians. They're very talented. So it's just the first few deliveries. The first 2 or 3 wicket-taking deliveries, you keep them away, and big scores are waiting.
India haven't won a test series in England since 2007. How much pressure do you think there is, not only on Virat Kohli's team selection and tactics as captain, but now also on his batting performances, which haven't really been up to his usual high standards so far this series? How much pressure, Charu?
It's the candle's lit from both ends. It's a pincer movement here, because had he been getting runs, the attention would have been only on his captaincy and the few changes that are required. But because he has not been getting runs, well, there are all sorts of figures in the media about how he hasn't scored 100 for so long, and, just about a 50 and a 50 there. So there's, as far as the media is concerned, or the Indian cricket fan is concerned, there's enormous pressure on Kohli to deliver with the bat first, because there are only that many choices that you can make in terms of team selection or which bowler, etc. And yes, there is pressure on that front as well. But Kohli can shut everybody up by a big score individually, because the tactics are always going to be subjective. Should he have bowled so-and-so first or chosen this? And tactics are also shared by the senior management of the team. So it's not just a one-man affair. But he needs runs. He needs a nice, beautiful century to set him back on the pedestal.
And Charu, in terms of team selection then, would you have liked to have seen Ravichandran and Ashwin play more of a part in this test series?
Well, that's the big controversy here, or point of conversation anyway. But we all know why Jadeja was chosen earlier on, because, he's a decent, or should we say, a clever spinner. And there are a fair number of right-handed batsmen who could be a little apprehensive when Jadeja bowls. Also, of course, in the field, because of his fabulous fielding, he saves a good few runs anyway, and I suppose you can even call him an all-rounder. So he has contributed with the bat fairly efficiently a couple of times. But it's the fast bowling department, really. So, yeah, if there's a straight swap between Jadeja and Ashwin, a lot of cricket fans will be happy. But it's the fast bowling department, again, because they need to knock things over. And Ishant Sharma just seems so underdone, is he, that I have no doubt the Indian management will now say, Ishant, listen, it's been a little patchy for you. I think we'll get another fast bowler in for you. And to see him bowling that opening spell in the third test match was heartbreaking, because he was so relatively ineffective. If I might, I don't want to be disrespectful, but that was the time we needed Shami or somebody else. And I'm sure they will learn from that experience. And I have no doubt that the changes in the fast bowling department are what India truly need.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Ultra Edge, Hawkeye, Hotspot, the Stump mic. Cricket is now full of new technology. But could a microchipped ball transform the sport? A new Kookaburra Smartball is being trialled in the Caribbean Premier League. This chip is fitted into the cork rubber so it can feed back the speed, swing, bounce, and even the power of the bowler. It really is quite something. And the designers hope that the International Cricket Council might consider its use in future international matches. To tell us more, joining us on Stumped is former Australia bowler Michael Kasprowicz, who is the chairman and co-owner of Sportcore, the company which has been developing the Smartball. Michael, thank you for joining us on Stumped. What was your first impression of the concept of the Smartball when it was first raised with you?
Look, the first time I came across it and was introduced to it, immediately after my almost 20 years playing as a professional player and almost 8.5 years on the board as a director of Cricket Australia. So almost 30 years I've seen the game over this last period of time. Easily I identify this as the most exciting bit of sport tech I've seen in all my time. And the reason is that it's for the player, because it's giving the player feedback about what they're doing, rather than the strength and conditioning coach, the umpires, I suppose in a broadcast sense as well. Immediately I just was drawn to it because I thought it's so powerful because of the feedback the player's receiving out of the ball. And as you pointed out, those metrics of speed, spin and power are just the beginning.
How did the idea come about in the first place? I mean, you've been involved in cricket for a very long time. What was the light bulb moment?
Well, how it all worked, I came across the founder. His name is Ben Tattersfield. And Ben's on the Gold Coast. He came up with the idea kind of in his garage almost. And Ben's, a younger guy, certainly younger than me. But what I like about it, and that was one of the reasons why I got involved, was that he talks about himself being a really bad golfer. And immediately when he thought, how can I change that? And so the way he thinks, he went out and he worked on a couple of bits and pieces and this tech and the idea, concept, and got to the point where he got to Titleist. I think it was Titleist, where he actually spoke to the people who are there and with the concept and, are you interested? And let's have a look. And they said, that's a fantastic idea, mate, but we make all our money from people losing golf balls. We actually don't need them to find them. So that's where he got the idea. And one of the things that I think for me was the attraction, not only the fact that, there's the story behind Ben and the concept, the fact that it was feedback for the player, but more importantly, he had actually had an agreement with Kookaburra. So rather than this product going to be as I like to say, a Santa sack filler come Christmas time and just a novelty item, there was something around that, because when you're dealing with a 100-year-old company, private company, they're really protective, obviously, on their brand and what they produce and all that. So it was really important that connection. And given the fact that I realise in England, where you are, Izzy, there's the Duke, and over in Charu, over in India, of course, it's the SG. But right around the world for one-day cricket, meaning T20 and 50-over cricket, the Kookaburra turf ball comes in white and is used right around the world. So immediately I knew that the players are going to use it in all those events. So that to me was the attraction of being involved in this.
Jim Maxwell here in Sydney. Nice to see you. You were during the Shield final, I recall. So it's being used in the Caribbean Premier League. What's the feedback been from the players so far?
Well, they're playing at Warner Park in St Kitts. The whole tournament is right there. And it's not that big of an oval, actually. And so what has happened is that, we haven't lost all that many balls, which is kind of surprising. But the feedback's been great. The players love it because, as I mentioned, they're getting feedback.
Kasper, hi, this is Charu Sharma for All India Radio from India. You sound like Dr. Kasprowicz at this point in time. And finally, there's something more for the bowlers to celebrate, because they keep saying it's a batsman's game, but I'm glad there's something for the bowlers now. How are you doing with the acceptance of the ball? How long before the world uses it, and what's the acceptance from the ICC so far?
Oh, we've had conversations. I've spoken with ICC, we've spoken with IPL, we've spoken with Cricket Australia, all different environments. Everyone's really interested. So this is the most engaging bit of sport tech I've ever come across. And that to me was the real thing, because what we want to do is make it accessible and affordable for every cricketer.
Well, thank you, Michael, for joining us on Stumped. I think ever the diplomat as far as Australian cricket is concerned, but in terms of that technology, that's the exciting bit. I mean, maybe Justin Langer could do with some of the data points there to help him along and to cover over some of the cracks that are forming. Not that I'm taking any glee in this from an English perspective, but Michael, thank you very much. And I do wonder as well with the data that you get from these chips, I feel like it's somewhere for women's cricket to really expand as well, because one of the problems with developing women's cricket and the bowling, especially on the fast bowling, is that there aren't enough data points. There's not enough numbers or analysis that to be provided from what we currently have. So perhaps this is an area that could be exploited for the women's game as well. Jim, you're an old school man, and yet I feel as though the data points are something that have really piqued your interest.
Well, I'm always interested in that, but I'm more of a romantic when it comes to the game, and I like to see the things that are variables be sustained. And in cricket, we don't play on the same pitches all the time. We don't play in the same atmospheric conditions all the time. They vary a bit. And the ball. There's the one thing in cricket that is not standardised. We don't have a standard ball other than looking at its size and its weight, which is specified in the laws. But, the material that goes into a ball is different between a Dukes and a Kookaburra and an SNG. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what impact the data that's produced from this has on the way the game is played.
That's all we've got time for this week on Stumped on All India Radio. My thanks to Charu, Sharma, Jim, Maxwell, and to you all for listening. And don't forget, you can keep in touch with the show during the week. We're at BBCWS Sport and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. In the meantime, stay safe and see you next week.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.